Let's look at the electric bass instrument from Steinberg, which features over 12 gigabytes of high-quality bass samples. The electric bass works as a HALion instrument and can load into the freely available HALion Sonic SE 3-player, HALion Sonic, or HALion. It works in the plugin formats of AAX, AU, VST2, as well as VST3. When we look at the instruments, we can see our instrument and controls on the left-hand side, amplifiers and effects on the right, as well as our fingerboard at the bottom. If we wanted to change the appearance of the finish of the instrument, we could click on this little drop-down menu, and we could have a white bass, a bass in natural, blue, or sunburst finish. To the left of that, we have a little cogwheel where we could adjust additional settings, such as our pitch bend range, the amount of fret buzz controls for ghost notes, and different slide. If we want to introduce some of the natural, realistic characteristics of an electric bass, many of them will have fret buzz. So we could adjust the level and frequency of when the fret buzz is introduced. So we'll just kind of turn this up for demonstration purposes. But as we would hit a note, you could have and listen to the fret buzz actually be incorporated. We could introduce that kind of sporadically, or if we wanted it to not be incorporated at all, we can adjust right there. Here we can see slide speed controls, and we can have two different slide speed controls set at different musical rhythms. And what we can do to differentiate these is by having a lower or higher velocity. To work with our slide speed, what we can do is just enable the auto slide here. And what I'm going to do is hit one note and then press a second note before releasing the first note. And then what's going to happen is it will slide up the same string to play the second pitch. And depending on how hard I hit the second note, whether I hit with a soft velocity or hard velocity, will determine the rate at which it slides up. So let's take a quick listen. So that was with a soft velocity, and now with a hard velocity. So very easy to set your different slide speeds to mimic how a bass player would actually play a particular phrase. We also have ghost note controls within the setting, so we can set the level and release. And what a ghost note is a note that's not fully articulated, so you may not be able to really determine the pitch, but we could actually set a velocity threshold. So I could say notes below a velocity of 40, we could have set to trigger a ghost note. So if we have like a passing phrase, it's often a very typical use of ghost notes. So a fully articulated note. Now we've sampled every single note on every single string. And as we have additional information and notes that are available within the MIDI specification, we've incorporated different embellishment samples. And that's what we see with this range of notes. So I could have notes that slide up, or if I wanted to have kind of different scratches and like hitting the pick. Now what's interesting with this is we could also change kind of the musical direction, whether the pitch goes up or descends or goes down based upon the velocity. So if I hit this note with a higher velocity, it'll go one direction, so up. And if I hit this with a lower velocity on the same note, it tends to go down in pitch or fall in pitch. Bass players will change the tonal characteristics of their instrument greatly by having different pickup configurations. So let's see how we could change our pickup configurations. So here we'll have a typical J bass, which is kind of spaced single coil pickups. Or if I wanted a P bass. an MM bass, or I wanted a combination of all those pickups combined, or I wanted just the neck pickup from a J bass configuration. I want just a bridge pickup, or I want each pickup to be sent to stereo. So you get all sorts of great tones just by switching your pickup configurations. One tool that bassists use to kind of change the tone for a particular song is by using their tone knob. Now, many people erroneously think of this as just kind of rolling off the highs, but it's actually a pretty sophisticated filter. So we've physically modeled the tone knob for different pickup configurations. So we'll go ahead and roll off the tone knob. And let's switch to a P bass pickup. So very easy to kind of get all those in-between sounds to get your tone to fit very nicely in your track. Now, as bass players want to change the attack of the instrument, they often will play with fingers, they could slap, use a pick, they could mute, and we have all these articulations sampled. So if we wanted to switch between, let's say, our fingers, we can think of this as sustain. Or you could have slap, or sustain with a pick, or slap pull where the bottom 3 strings are slapped, the top 2 are pulled. Or if you want kind of a classic Motown vibe, you could have muted. You have artificial harmonics, or just the natural harmonics. And each of these can be set from different key switches. So you could actually just play and fire off the key switches. Now, different players will choose how to move up the strings at different points in time in a song. So we could have different, depending upon your bass line, how different players in different genres of music would naturally switch positions if needed. So we could actually just kind of switch these different player perspectives of how to switch between different bass lines. Now, as I mentioned before, each note of each string was sampled. And this is something that's really unique in that a lot of times when you hit a note on bass, it's going to play kind of the same string all the time. So we see these green articulations here. And what this is going to allow us to do is to force a particular string to be used. So let's say if I wanted to play a C major scale, we'll see it kind of probably stay within the first position here. And switch strings. But if I wanted to hit the key switch for the green note here, I could say, let's play all of those notes on a particular, let's say just on the A string. If we wanted to listen to, let's say, a G note, which could be played as on the open G string, the D string, A string, or E string, depending on which string you actually use, we can get completely different tones, even though it's the same pitch. So let's say that's going to be our open string. And if I want to play it on the E string, the A string, D, or G, you have the choice to pick which exact string is being used. And And that could come in really handy for, let's listen to quickly a musical example where we may have just kind of a part where you may want to emphasize just a little bit of that. So let's say we're going to come here. So let's say that G. Next time we go to that G on the octave. And we'll go to the A string. And let's go to the E string for the G. So even though it could be the same pitch, you may want to actually have that function and be able to pick and choose what string. And that's something that I find as a bassist really important. And one of the things also that is great about this is how we can have different dynamic control. So a lot of instruments don't necessarily have a lot of dynamics. So let's listen to, like if we wanted to play soft. One of the things, if we're using Cubase, we have great support for expression maps to be able to manage all of these articulations. So if I wanted to go to my expression map, I could just click on import key switches, and now we could see all of the different articulations available for the instrument has automatically been created. And when we go to look at our editor, we could now double click and we could choose to just come right here and we'll look at our articulations. So as we would play, if we wanted to just draw in different articulations, so say coming up here, I wanted to switch to slap. So we'll just rewind. So this will send a key switch to the instrument. Or if we want it to be mute. So we could just kind of switch between all the articulations as we see fit. If we wanted to play around and kind of change the tone using some of the effects and amplifiers, there's great inclusion of those within the plugin. So as we want to come here, we could blend between the DI signal and the amplifier. So let's look at, and we'll activate the amplifier. So just about every bass player would recognize this amplifier model, and you could switch between different amps. As well as different speaker configurations. So if you want to bypass the amp. And we could also have a number of different effects plugins as pedals. So we come here, we could adjust the EQ. And many times, a lot of bass players are very familiar with this DI driver. Or if we wanted to have an envelope filter, different modulation effects like a chorus or a flanger. Octaver, or leave it in overdrive. So very, very easy to kind of dial in the sound. So with great levels of control for pickup configurations, natural musical embellishments, little idiosyncrasies of the instrument like fret buzz, being able to incorporate that, and ghost notes, being able to switch different players, whether it's slapped, picked, fingered, running through different amplifiers, different speaker configurations, and effects. But the ability to have the musical choice of being able to choose which particular string a note is actually played from is a very powerful tool. So as you can see, the electric bass is a great tool for covering just about any scenario for your electric bass sequence in your production. If you have found this video helpful, please feel free to like the video and to subscribe to the channel.